So just to start on a little bit about SomnoMed, the company, we start always with our vision and our mission, which we're very proud of as a company. To be honest, we talk about patients right in the beginning. We talk about treating patients. It is absolutely fundamental to our business. We are concerned about patients being treated who suffer from obstructive sleep apnea, and I'll get into that a little bit further down the presentation. And our mission to achieve that is to really advance the acceptance and adoption of our oral appliance therapy solution by including everybody. So the mission and vision tell you that we're patient-centric and multidisciplinary at the end of the day. That's our vision and mission for the organization. What have we done so far? We have built an extensive dental network over the last 14 years. It's really important to go dental first and the fulfillment of our product pathway first, and then build the medical side, which is the demand side, which I'll explain again a little bit later. Underpinning everything we've done has been the clinical research heritage of our products and of our supply and business. Again, we're patient-centric, but we have strong sales and marketing teams in place in each of the 28 countries we operate in. So this is not an Australian, it's an Australian listed, but a global organization. We're in 28 countries across Asia Pacific, 16 countries in Europe, North America, including obviously the USA and Canada. We follow all regulatory and quality assurance standards, ISO, manufacturing, CE, TGA, FDA, everything that moves in medical devices. We have category leading products. They're really important because we base all of the facts and foundation of what we build on two things: comfort and retention. Very important when you talk about oral appliance, and I'll talk about that equally so a little bit further down the line. We focus on reimbursement initiatives, especially in Europe. So we make sure that we are able to gain or get granted reimbursement for our products in the European context. And if not, we lobby and we lobby and we lobby until that happens. We've changed reimbursement policies and practices over the 14 years ourselves as well. We focus on medical education. We tell people, we educate people, and we instruct people on what dental sleep medicine is really all about. We own our own manufacturing facility. We don't outsource this, it's not a third party. It's SomnoMed's manufacturing facility, including our own digital manufacturing pathway now, which is really, really exciting. Costs come down, time comes down, quality goes up in all of the digital manufacturing that we now adopt in our facility. We have an incredible board of directors. I'm incredibly proud of who we have as our chairman and as our board. Experienced, diverse, engaged, active board of directors. They do not just sit and take fees. They work for us in our business. And equally so, our executive team in all three key regions are an incredible team to help support me execute on the plans that the board of directors set us. So what is obstructive sleep apnea? Firstly, it's really important to understand that is where you have an obstructed airway during sleep. So when you're lying down and you're sleeping and you're resting and your body relaxes, all the muscles relax, everything starts to refresh and rejuvenate your brain, all of your organs, etc., etc. What can happen is that the back of the throat, the tongue, and everything at the back of that area can cause an obstruction into the airway area at the back of that tongue area. And so that's really gives rise to obstructive sleep apnea. And the number of times that happens in an hour is graded as to your mild, moderate, or severe OSA. We have a device that is targeted at the area of obstruction. So we have an oral appliance that you wear over your teeth. It moves your lower jaw, your mandible, slightly forward at night by 1 millimeter or 2, and thereby unobstructs exactly where the obstructed area occurs. We do this with an oral appliance. This is our flagship product, the SomnoDent Avant. It has a titration mechanism. Titration meaning, how do you dose dependent the medicine? How do you move, how much forward do you need to move the mandible to get the right ultimate and optimum position for treatment to be reached? We do this with a comfortable device because we own a proprietary material. Nobody has this soft comfort liner inside the device that is comfortable and soft on the teeth. It gives us retention as I mentioned earlier, if you don't have retention and the device falls out of your mouth, you can buy these for $99 on the internet, Boyle and Bites. They're not customized, they're not quality made, they're not retentive, and they certainly are not comfortable. And here's one of our very big issues within the sleep market and industry. If the device is not comfortable, people will not wear it. And compliance is a massive factor as we talk about CPAP further down the line. Our credentials, you can read yourselves. What's important here on this slide really is that 91% of our patients generally around the world report improvement of sleep quality while wearing our products and retain wearing the device all night, every night. They remain in treatment. This compliance factor is really, really important. So the market opportunity itself, as most of you will know, if you know anything about the sleep apnea market globally and the sleep world market, 1.4 billion patients annually go into treatment. 8% of the populations generally have a prevalence of OSA. It's an underpenetrated market in itself, but even that number is an enormous number of patients that seek a medical treatment for a debilitating long-term and chronic disease. CPAP, which is continuous positive airway pressure, which has been around for 25, 30 years, marketed by ResMed, Fisher & Paykel, Philips Respironics globally, a multi-billion-dollar industry, has one really, really, I suppose, important issue and dilemma. That is that 50% of patients do not use CPAP after at least 6 months. Compliance is very, very low. As much as CPAP is 100% efficacious, it works. Complying with CPAP on an all-night, every night basis is really a challenge for most patients. The second dilemma that CPAP has is that most patients can't wear CPAP all night. And as you can see by the simple graph, the red block on the side shows with CPAP in a particular study that we looked at, that patients start off by going to bed with CPAP on, so their AHI levels come all the way down for half the night. Typically halfway through the night, you go to the bathroom, you come back, you do not put CPAP back on, your AHIs go straight back up again, and for half of the night, and the most important, second half of the night, you remain untreated. As opposed to the SomnoDent device that is slightly less efficacious, we can't treat all severe patients equally effectively, but patients wear our device all night, every night. And so your overall sleep apnea event score over the night is better and improved. So again, remaining in treatment, being treated every night, all night, is a critical factor to a chronic disease that happens for the rest of your life. Our competitive advantage is clear. It speaks to the history that I spoke to earlier, clinical research that underpins everything that we do, design and innovation in the product, the materials, and the titration mechanism is really important because it drives patient comfort, and comfort equals compliance for us, and compliance is our strength. We have an extensive sales and distribution footprint in both the medical and the dental channels, best-in-class service and technical support, and an incredibly passionate team that want to see more patients treated more effectively. We've also now added a competitive advantage that we're building. We've been building this during the COVID time, is a technology piece that we believe will unlock the true potential of oral appliances. And I'll speak to that further down the line. The treatment options for most patients around the world started with surgery, and unfortunately in some Southeast Asian countries, surgery is still predominant. Unfortunately, it's obviously surgery is invasive. It's not that effective. It's quite costly, and so it's not an avenue or an option that I think will be around for the future. CPAP we've spoken about, continuous positive airway pressure, the mask that people wear over their nose and mouth to blow pneumatic air down the airway to keep the airway open, is, as we've said, highly efficacious, but suffers from low compliance. Patients don't tolerate that very easily, and certainly not all night and every night. And then we have continuous open airway therapy. We have an acronym called COAT, against the CPAP acronym in a way, but it's an oral appliance, and it's oral appliance to hold the mandible forward and open the airway and allows airflow to continue all night and every night. And both CPAP and surgery tend to be more expensive over the longer term because of the replacement hoses and masks and things that you need to always replace with CPAP. Whereas, in fact, with an oral appliance, once you've bought your oral appliance, you're done. Our goal as a company and as a medical device company is to grow the sector that is oral appliances today. It's too small. As we started off 15 years ago, it was nothing 15 years ago. Today, it's around 8 to 10% of all positively diagnosed patients globally in most first world countries that we operate in today. My goal and SomnoMed's goal, the board's goal, is to grow the sector into something more meaningful. 20, 30, 40% of positively diagnosed patients. Not everybody needs CPAP. If you're mild and moderate, you don't need the wheelchair before the crutches. You don't need to take the sledgehammer to the violet. You need to make sure that patients have a treatment option that they are compliant with. It's no good giving somebody medicine that they don't take. It's no good giving somebody CPAP that after 3 months they don't wear it anymore, and therefore are not avoiding the serious comorbidities that come down the line that are far more serious than sleep itself in terms of diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular risk, heart disease, etc., etc. And our aim is to do this, to grow the segment, to grow the sector, and remain global leaders as that sector grows, and thereby carving out for us a category leadership in a growing market. FY21 results seems like decades ago already, but anyway, it's worth covering for the audience this afternoon. We reached revenues of just under 63 million in FY21, EBITDA just under 4 million, and had a very strong cash and positive cash flow balance sheet, with which we're now committing some of that to the technology development for FY22 and beyond. So the future innovation, horizons and outlook for our business, very, very positive. We've always been treatment focused. Our mantra is 4 words: treatment focused, technology driven. The treatment focused comes from the clinical research, the design of the product, the extensive sales and distribution network we've had, best in class service and technical support. It is everything to do with being treatment focused, but also added to that is now technology driven, the future of the technology piece, which will now add to the future of our business. We've always built awareness, acceptance, and adoption into our business, and now we've added a 4th, this technology piece that will allow us to build an ecosystem, if you like, an ecosystem of smart technologies onto the product to give us this category leadership in a multi-million-dollar opportunity. Our outlook is clear, and I think you may have seen this before. Our guidance is at least revenue growth of 15%. And this year's an EBITDA break-even. We're investing the EBITDA and $8 million of our cash back into the development of this technology piece that hopefully for us will step change the acceptance of oral appliances into the future and add technology for the first time, proper technology, to an oral appliance. That is the end of the presentation and the slides. So I'll stop sharing that at this stage and open up to any questions. Thank you.
We did have a couple of investors let us know that they couldn't make it for today's meeting, so they submitted their questions beforehand. So I might just go through some of those to get the ball rolling first. Maybe let's just talk a little bit about market size first. Just to help people get their heads into the space. What percentage of the population would have diagnosed or undiagnosed sleep apnea, and how does someone get diagnosed for that condition?
Yeah, I think the diagnosis of sleep apnea globally in a sort of normal market cohort of prevalence is always and still is unfortunately quite low. A lot of the reports that we read in terms of any of the medical reports that come out of the US and Europe, similarly, companies that do research like ResMed, big companies like ResMed that do research, show us around about 8, 9, 10% maybe of populations who suffer from OSA are diagnosed with that. So there's a very low diagnosis rate still. And I think that's because of an inherent issue with sleep apnea. You don't know you have sleep apnea. it happens while you're sleeping. And
Correct.
so most diagnosis happens when you feel pain, you feel ill, you feel sick, you want to get tested for something, you go to a doctor and you seek treatment.
Yeah.
I think there'll always be a low diagnostic rate because of the inherentness of what sleep apnea really is. And so everybody feels tired. You just don't know what's causing your tiredness, right? Until it's brought out and shown to you. So I think that diagnostic rates could always improve. And today, home sleep tests is the way that most people through their GP or PCP in the US would know about that. Go for a home sleep test is a simple, almost like a watch, and a few nodes that link to your chest and your head to test breathing. And that's the normal way now to get tested for whether you have OSA or not, and the severity of your OSA.
It's interesting, Neil, that you talk about, a watch. Do you think the diagnosis rate is going to climb or maybe continue climbing, with the prevalence of, smart wearables, stuff like sleep trackers? I know a couple of friends who have this app on their phone literally called Sleep Tracker, and it'll tell you if you've been snoring. You can, if you subscribe to their subscription, whatever, you can listen to the recording of it. Potentially it highlights choking as well sometimes. Do you see, the growth in that market sort of increasing the market size or the diagnostic rate for OSA?
I think all of these wearables and also nearables, so things that you put near your bed that pick up the similar things and sounds, etc. But what's coming, by the way, is also ingestibles to do similar sort of diagnostic and treatment screenings. All of these are creating incredible engagement. So you're taking a consumer who's unaware and now becomes aware of some of the metrics or the measures that might be given to them through these wearables and nearables. And so you become an engaged consumer. What we've got to be careful about is that none of these, I think none, almost 100% none, are diagnostic and acceptable diagnostics. So they're almost what we could call in the industry screening and engagement tools. They're not diagnostic tools yet. They're not yet there, and I'm sure that that's only a matter of time as to whether they are diagnostically accepted enough for medical practitioners to accept what they've been told and the data that's been given to them to confirm a disease state.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think an investor brought up before, this is a question from Severity Investments. They asked, is SomnoMed looking at the emerging self-monitoring tools that are available in the market, and incorporating those into the product offering? He's specifically thinking about the Res app, sleep listening app, that can be extended to to treatment management. So is that more a screening tool, or is that sort of, post-treatment type of, how do you think about that kind of?
Yeah, I think it's more of a pre-treatment at the beginning of the funnel, the patient pathway screening tool, to be honest. And we'll partner with all of those and everybody, to be honest, again, multidisciplinary, all-inclusive, to try and make sure that most consumers who are not yet aware that they have sleep apnea are at least screened and then diagnosed and then treated, of course. We are a treatment and a therapy company at this stage. And so we're focusing on the things that matter to us. We're treatment focused, as we said, and we're technology driven. So a lot of what we're doing right now and the technology piece that we're building, I think in the future will allow us to look at adjunct and ancillary and closely aligned pieces to the therapy end. But at this stage, we focused on therapy and we focused on the technology piece within our therapy.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. I guess moving on to that therapy bit, what are the different patient pathways, that someone might take? For example, maybe my partner alerts me to, chronic snoring or something, and I go in and get a sleep test done, or, maybe I feel very tired every day. I've already cut caffeine out of my life. I'm starting to wonder, is it something else? How do I get diagnosed? And after, I see a sleep physician, what are the different, what's the gold standard at the moment? What are my options?
Yeah, and normally what happens in most of the 28 countries that we have experience in, and it's a similar theme, although there are some differences in some countries,
Mm-hmm.
is that if you're feeling that way and you're feeling lethargic or tired and always sort of falling asleep, in the afternoons and not making it through the day necessarily, seeing your GP is the first port of call, without a doubt. And most GPs are aware enough of sleep and sleep treatments and how that should be then at least screened and tested. You'd go for a home sleep test, and a sleep physician would then score the test. You mild, moderate, or severe, and they'd give you some options. Those options are normally do nothing, right? You're okay, not much that you can do, or lose some weight. There's a very big link and propensity between obesity and weight to obstructive sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the non-invasive options, of course. The gold standard, unfortunately for us at this stage, but again, it's been created by three major companies around the world, is CPAP, and mostly physicians, whether you're mild, moderate, or severe, and that's our argument. Not everybody needs this. Normally prescribes CPAP, and you'd go to a DME in the US or a CPAP reseller, like a retail store, if you like, to get fitted with a CPAP mask and hose and the machine. Or an oral appliance means you go to a dentist who's been trained in dental sleep medicine and fits an oral appliance to your teeth, takes an impression. We make it to fit that impression. You wear it in your mouth, and you're treated with an oral appliance.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. It just blows my mind to think that the first, I guess, or the most popular prescription is to stick a reverse vacuum down your throat.
That's right.
And so that's CPAP right. Is 100% effective when you use it. But how does that sort of how does CPAP and your oral appliance compare? In terms of I guess upfront costs, ongoing costs, but also what was that point I wanted to touch on? Maybe you can talk to us about that first, and then as I remember.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I mean, CPAP, again, is highly effective, but not many people wear it and not wear it all night, every night. And so the continued compliance is pretty low. CPAP has been around for longer and was really the only alternative. And that's why it's got an entrenched market size and market share as far as we're concerned. And we're slowly changing that to a more patient-friendly, easier to use choice, which is the oral appliance, and a comfortable one at that. When you go for a CPAP machine, you can buy it or rent it. And so the rental is an attractive option to try it out for 2 or 3 months or 4 months, because after that, you're probably not going to wear it after that anyway. And also what's happened with reimbursement is that most insurers don't buy CPAP anymore because of the compliance issue. They'll only rent it, and only as you're compliant will they pay for it. When they prove that you're not compliant anymore, they stop payment. So it's trying to actually keep the costs of treatment down and link it to compliance, exactly the issue that they have. When it comes to oral appliances, it needs a dentist to fit the device because it's a custom-made device. They need to orally check suitability that you can wear the device and that we can take you out of centric for 8 hours a night and move you forward by a couple of millimeters. So that's important, that a dentist checks the suitability of the patient to be able to do that. Our device is charged up front and then no costs after that. So CPAP, even if you rent it over a 5-year period with the replacement hoses and masks that you need to constantly invest in, it's been proven that our appliance, even though it's upfront, is half the cost of CPAP over a 5-year period. And that's why we have direct managed care contracts with insurers in Sweden, Holland, now Switzerland, and now Belgium, and to come Germany, because the cost over time, which is the time value that you need in compliance to avoid comorbidities, is linked to that payment. And so it suits insurers to support oral appliances too.
Yeah, so you're saying, how does that reimbursement program work? Is it fully reimbursable in those countries, and which other countries?
So the reimbursement, the reimbursement again differs by region and country, and we want more reimbursement and we want full reimbursement. So we have some that are full, some that are partial, and some that there's no reimbursement other than the sleep test itself, but the treatment you're on your own. In the US, there is full reimbursement. There's Medicaid, there's Medicare, and most of the private health insurers cover for CPAP and certainly for oral appliances. So What depends and what differs is your plan, your employer, the state that you're in, and various other factors that drive the extent to which your cover would be reached by the cost of the oral appliance or not. In the European context, we probably have half of our 16 countries that are fully reimbursed by the government socialist healthcare systems. The patient pays nothing.
Yeah.
About another half of those have partial reimbursement. So in other words, the patient pays something. And some of the normal Spain, Portugal, Italy, parts of Europe, there's no reimbursement other than the sleep test. And that's the same for Australia.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. It sounds a little bit like what we pay for education, across different
yes,
across the different jurisdictions. In some countries it's a basic right, but glad to see insurers in the US catching up as well. What's the feedback I guess you've received from sleep physicians, but also patients, in terms of their experience with SomnoMed or your other products?
Yeah, I think sleep physicians are still learning that it is a viable alternative that patients actually prefer. And we've changed that over the last 14, 15 years. SomnoMed had made oral appliances a non-dental product. It's a medical device registered with the FDA. It needs a quality manufacture. It needs comfortable retention to be an effective long-term medical device. SomnoMed changed that. With that came the whole advent, basically, of how oral appliances have been accepted globally and that they are highly effective. It started research, clinical papers, and a fundamental underpinning of therapeutic outcomes that sleep physicians now start to sit up and take notice of. So when we first got involved, and oral appliances were 2% of the market, they're now 8, 9, 10%, and we want that to become 20 and 30%. I think sleep physicians are now understanding the compliance argument relating to CPAP. When it comes to patients only want one thing: comfort. They want to make sure that when they put the device in the mouth, it's comfortable. They don't feel it after 2 or 3 nights at all. And the second thing is, when they wake up in the morning, they want to know that they are completely refreshed. We have patients and testimonials of patients who wake up for the first time in the morning after wearing an oral appliance with tears streaming down their face, thinking, this is not how I've ever woken up before. I don't know that this is what it means to get sleep. And so we're completely moved and connected and engaged with that feeling. We change people's lives. We give people their lives back. And we all know what it means to get sleep and what it means to not have to get sleep.
Yeah, incredible. Wow. Someone asked, we were talking a little bit about market size before, but what is the average cost of, say, customer acquisition? Because, a lot of, I guess, there are a lot of professionals that are involved along the pathway. And, educating these professionals, educating sleep physicians. What's the average cost of, say, a customer acquisition in?
Yeah, it's not a number that we would typically disclose, Timothy. It's still too much of a small, competitive and niche industry. But let's say this: it hasn't stopped SomnoMed doing its utmost to try and reach sleep physicians to understand that oral appliances are an alternative to CPAP. So we haven't stopped it much. We've done many things. We've not done everything right. We've tried many avenues. We've invested in many projects to try and reach and screen and convert consumers who don't know that they have sleep apnea into patients to be treated. And secondly, to change the prescribing behavior of sleep physicians who have always in the past fundamentally always gone default to CPAP. And that should change too, in our opinion, for at least mild and moderate patients. So we spend whatever's necessary at this stage to grow the sector. We really are adamant about what's needed to invest in the sector so that the sector of oral appliances grows for all participants.
And I think you've talked about this before, maybe not today, but, moving the market share up, 1%, means that, like that SomnoMed becomes a company twice the size of what it currently is, with 1.4 patients,
Correct.
1.4 billion patients going to treatment. Yeah.
That's right.
It's a growing market, and you've proven that, you can grow the market share from what was 2% 14 years ago to where it is today, 8 to 10% of prescribed things. And, I like that analogy that you use about you don't need a wheelchair if all you need is crutches, right?
Yep.
Can you talk to us about, how like the severity of sleep apnea? It's measured in this term called AHI, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it's something everybody's immediately familiar with.
No.
If you could, tell us a little bit more about that.
So firstly, your point is correct. If we move CPAP by 1%, SomnoMed doubles. We're not creating a new world order. We're not creating a new market. The market is there. The patients are there. Sleep physicians are seeing thousands, hundreds of thousands of patients every year. If we moved 1% from CPAP to oral appliances, SomnoMed would double. So the runway and the scope for growth of for our organization is incredible.
And if you don't mind me jumping in before you continue on that bit, I think there was this huge product recall with Philips in earlier this year, or was it the year before? So there is a huge underserved, already diagnosed market, that's just there for the taking.
And fraught with issues, Timothy, unfortunately, right, in terms of what Medicare are still saying. So Medicare have not changed their reimbursement rules that say in the US, you need to fail CPAP before we'll reimburse an oral appliance. Well, you can't get CPAP to fail CPAP. And so it makes absolutely no sense, and should be the other way around, of course. And so for those very few patients that can't tolerate an oral appliance and severe should get CPAP. Not everybody should get CPAP. You'll find more and more compliant patients on an oral appliance and avoiding comorbidities and costs for insurers if they first went on to an oral appliance and not CPAP. There's no doubt about that. I have now forgotten the second part of your question because I've gone and derailed what you said.
That's okay. That was my fault. No, I think we basically covered it off. We were talking about, sorry, can you explain to us the severity. of CPAP? Yes, that's AHI and that kind of thing.
Correct. The measure that we've used, or the industry has used always in the past, is how many interruptions do you have an hour? Basically, that's the severity. And so those interruptions are measured by if you have an airway that's narrowed and you're not getting oxygen to the brain for at least 10 seconds. That's an interruption of a apnea-hypopnea event, which is the AHI. The number that you have in an hour and the severity index is up to 5 if you are mild, 5 to 15 if you're moderate. Sorry, 5 to 15 if you're moderate, and 15 to 30 if you are severe. And so that shows the index with which they measure mild, moderate, and severe OSA. The thinking today is that that's not good enough. Just the number of interruptions don't tell you the oxygen desaturation. It doesn't tell you the depth by which the length of that interruption. It says at least 10 seconds. What happens if it lasts for 30 seconds? And there are other measures that they should be thinking about, including compliance in that measure, to think about a better score outcome than just the number of interruptions that you have in an hour.
Yeah, that's very helpful. So what's the distribution, of, sort of mild, moderate, and severe patients? And let's talk about like which patients should be getting oral appliances
right away. Yeah. Great question. In most of the 28 countries that we have experience in, it's quite an equal distribution in most of those countries to be a third. Okay. Third mild, third moderate, third severe. Some countries with incredibly high obesity rates will have a greater severe component to their population, and other populations with a very high youth or younger population slant will then have a much higher mild component, and maybe 40% will be mild, not a third. But in any case, if we take the general third, at least 2/3 or 70% are mild and moderate. And that's our sweet spot. That's exactly where an oral appliance treats the best and has the best outcome because of the compliance and the efficacy needed to treat a mild and moderate patient. Severe and extremely severe patients are really complicated. They tend to be very overweight, and it doesn't matter how much you move the mandible forward by, it doesn't change ultimately effectively enough the opening of the airway, and they need CPAP.
Yeah, it's just too much tissue.
It's too much
blocking the airway.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Understood.
There's too much going on for just the mandible to move and treat.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to jump into some very specific financial questions that were posed by some investors. But just a reminder to anyone on the call, if you want to unmute yourself and jump in, or if you want to type a question into the chat, you can go ahead and do that. But if not, I'm going to jump into this question about I guess recurring revenues. How often does a patient need to come back for so an adjustment or replacement of the product? I guess this is really asking about recurring revenues, if there are any.
We don't have any recurring revenues at the moment, which will not excite a lot of the potential shareholders out there at all. We make a quality product. We have some patients in Australia who we've been here the longest in Australia who still wear their device after 8, 9, 10 years. If you need work done on your teeth, then of course the device needs to be adjusted to fit your teeth again. And so we have some constant replacement that is natural in the evolution of work and dental work that might happen. But our device is a quality device, and it does last if you look after it and clean it properly. We have a cleaning tablet, which is the recurring part of our revenue, if you like. It's not in the device, but it's a cleaning tablet that we use and that patients and dentists and sleep physicians buy on behalf of their patients. I think that the new technology that we're building for the future could add a new recurring revenue stream, perhaps, in the future.
And I think, maybe since we've touched on that, can we understand it in more detail what the technology pathway is? And I think it was spoken about potentially the AGM, transformational connectivity development. If we can talk a little bit about that today. I know it's slated for a January launch and a market release then. But what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Timothy, not much more than that, unfortunately. We're undergoing clinical trials at the moment. We're protecting legal, regulatory, IP at the moment. And so we're not able to say more than we've been able to say so far, right? So we call it a smart ecosystem, if you like. And you can read into that what you like. You've mentioned the word transformational connectivity. Those are all good descriptions. But the details of that we'll have to hold off on, unfortunately.
Okay. No, that's all right. I think a lot of us are eagerly anticipating that, because we know that, clinical trials have been ongoing for the last year, and, they're wrapping up, and we're pushing ahead with something, hopefully that's going to, launch SomnoMed into its next, like a step change of growth.
So just to correct you, the clinical trials are a couple of months only, and the technology build has been the last 18 months. Just to clarify. It doesn't need a clinical trial of 18 months.
Okay, understood.
Not like pharmaceuticals.
Much longer than 18 months for pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, right.
No, that's excellent to hear. All right. So someone asked, we've seen a steady revenue growth of 10% per annum, and a solid gross margin of above 60%. What are the plans towards profitability? Obviously there's this technology piece that is coming in, but at the end of the day, what's the objective of it? Is it revenue growth or is it cost control? Go.
Sorry. Yeah, right now it's about revenue growth. There's no doubt about that. Penetrating the market, converting CPAP to oral appliances, building the awareness, acceptance, and adoption, and making sure sort of the deeper penetration of oral appliances into the market happens. That's fundamentally what we have to do right now. We know that we can be profitable. We have been for the last 8 years or so. We broke even, 8 years ago. We've been building our EBITDA constantly, and we now know what to do next. So we're going to take that opportunity to invest that EBITDA back in, plus $8 million to build this technology, transformational technology ecosystem. And then once we've built that and we roll out our new product line and the technology piece, hopefully, of course, we gain great volume and market share through the next sort of 2 to 5 years. And that will enable us to bring back positive cash generation and EBITDA. At the end of the day, when we hit some sort of level of maturity, we want to be that mature medical device company returning 20% EBITDA percentage to revenues, like every other mature medical device company. But we're not mature yet.
Yeah. And at the moment, we're really focusing, I guess, on investing into growth. And, I think touching on cost control, just in a year of COVID, or maybe a year and a half of COVID, if you look at your financials, I think you've already done an incredible job of cost control. In a year where elective procedures, data showed that it was down incredibly, but you still managed to achieve those numbers in revenue and just cutting that bottom line.
Yeah, we did.
So you're already a very efficient company, a very lean company.
We are indeed.
Yeah. So, someone else also asked, what type of steady state net margins can we expect sort of going into the future? I know it may not be 100% certain. Sorry.
Steady state in a world of
in a world of growth
and turmoil.
Yeah.
Look, it's going to return to positive. It'll become single digits. It'll grow to double digits, and then we're hoping to get a net, as I say, EBITDA margin percentage to revenues of 20% plus. Eventually, once we become mature and entrenched, and we have volumes, and we have, again, the acceptance and adoption of the majority of sleep physicians around the world, it'll take time. This is not a short-term play. Medical devices, we're only 15 years young. Other medical device companies that we compete with are 80 to 100 years old, including ResMed, which I think is 32 or 33 years old. So we have a long way to go. It's building barriers to entry. It's building the foundations to make a credible long-term viable medical device company for the future.
Amazing. I think previously we talked about, patient feedback from a subjective standpoint, about people experiencing, quality sleep for the first time in years. But from a data perspective, is there a way that sleep physicians can track things like compliance, sleep quality, or what are the existing, I guess, monitoring tools out there that plug back into, sleep physicians, I guess, dashboard or patient monitoring tool?
Not much at the moment, but watch this space.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, if anyone else has any questions, I think we've gone through all the pre-submitted ones.
Right.
But Neil, if you've got anything you want to leave with today's audience at all before you wrap up?
Thanks, Timothy. I do. I think that the opportunity to invest in a healthcare business that's about to be a technology-enabled healthcare business in the area of sleep and obstructive sleep apnea, this is the opportunity. Healthcare, sleep plus technology. The future is the treatment of patients long-term from a chronic long-term disease, and we have the solution for that. Incredible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Neil and his team have proven over the last 14 years they can take market share from CPAP. They are more efficacious, when viewed through the lens of compliance. And it's going to be a step change this next year for SomnoMed. So they're already the market leader in oral appliances. They're looking to grow the market share, looking to become technology enabled. I think it's a story that we're very privileged to be showing and supporting at Spark Plus. We definitely appreciate the opportunity to work together, Neil. But thanks for taking the time today to walk us through that. It was incredibly insightful. I hope it was, added value for people who jumped on. And for anyone watching the recording, you were missed. And look, if we can connect you with Neil in any way, please let us know. But thanks everyone for today.
Thank you very much.